Hello, everyone. It's me, Kallum, back again. Welcome back. Um, yeah. Today, our third 1.1 character, Yukong, our 4-star. Our truly first new character we're talking about on this channel, as the past two characters had been in the beta, had been in the original release, we all got to play them and stuff, but nah, not for Yukong. Brand new character, obviously not in the story, we know her, but brand new gameplay kit and stuff. So yeah, so this time around, that's why I'm on Honey Hunter already, and we're not on some Reddit posts where we can compare the differences, because there is no differences. She's been released in the beta and she's just been the same. So, and since the live stream happened today in English and yesterday in Chinese, where she looks essentially the same, I'm gonna assume that's how she is. So that's why we're making this video today. So yeah, take a seat, grab a drink. So let's get right into it. Yukong is from the. Actually, I'm not gonna pronounce the faction name because I'm probably gonna butcher that. I did not practice pronunciations today. I'm sorry. Her path is Harmony, so yeah, she's a support, and she's our first imaginary 4-star. On top of that, I'm gonna do a very important disclaimer. For those who haven't watched the stream, Yukong is going to be free in 1.2 from what I've been told, from what I'm aware, from the event. Not in 1.1, because we're getting a free light cone instead. But next patch, when we get a character for free, it's gonna be Yukong, and she's gonna stay permanently free as the free imaginary character, since all players are supposed to have all elements, and Veld is a 5-star, so not giving him for free. And yeah, so if you want her, just as a character, totally can understand that. She looks cool. You know, you'll see some gameplay in a bit. She looks pretty neat. Yeah, you don't need to pull on Luocha's banner where she's on. You can just skip it and get her an easier version of her. But in terms of gameplay, that does have some limitations we'll get into. But yeah, so yeah, she's head of the Skyfaring Commission. She's a seasoned pilot in Deadshot, and nowadays she's just businesswoman, buried under paperwork. So yeah, typical life. Her stats, pretty average for 4-star. Not much that really jumps up here. So though her ult is 130 energy cost, which is somewhat high, honestly, but it's support, so it's not too surprising. This is, I believe, the same as Dingen's ult, which I'm just gonna check. Uh, Harmony. Wait, no, that's Lycon, bruh. All right, Dingen. Yeah, same as this. I think, yeah, Asta almost seems Asta's ult. Same as almost seems. So yeah, all harmonies have high ult cost, just how it is. So yeah, and yeah, we'll get into the skills, and after that, we'll get into some excelling as usual. I'm gonna talk about some more niche stuff about her, where she works, where she doesn't work. But yeah, for now, for this first part, the skills, Eidolons, and then the light cones she'll be using or can use effectively. But yeah, she's a basic attack. It's got weakness break, just basic weakness attack with 100% scaling, as any other. Then her skill, Emboldening Salvo, obtains 2 stacks of roaring bowstrings, a maximum of 2 stacks. When roaring bowstrings is active, the attack of allies increases by 80%, and every time an ally's turn ends, Yukong loses 1 stack of roaring bowstrings. When it's the turn where Yukong gains roaring bowstrings by using skill, roaring bowstrings will not be removed. Pretty simple, right? You press E, you press your E button on the keyboard twice, probably twice. Yeah, right, twice. And then, boom, 80% attack for the next ally. So she'll probably also get that buff. But that, well, no, wait, no, yeah, that doesn't matter because it's gonna be turn. Okay, never mind that. So she gives the buff so the ally whose turn is next is gonna have it. When they do an action, when their turn ends, then the next ally will also have this buff, but after that it's gone. No stacks means no attack percent buff. So yeah, but this is a pretty big buff. It's bigger than Asta's. Asta, when she has 5 stacks, gives 70% attack. So yeah, it's a decent buff. Now to the ultimate, divining, diving, diving Kestrel. When using your ultimate, if rolling bowstrings is active on Yukong, all allies' crit rating additionally increased by 28%, and their crit damage increases by 65%. At this, at the same time, deals imaginary damage equal to 380% of Yukong's attack to a single enemy. These are pretty decent numbers, right? 28% crit, that's almost as much as a chess piece. And the crit damage one is also, I think, even more than a chess piece. So, yeah, that's pretty good right there. And 380% of her attack as an enemy, which is actually, you might think like numbers don't mean everything because the stats are important. It could have 1000%, but if my stats are not in attack because the support and like a healer, then all the skill of the world won't fix your horrible damage. But in this case, because she doesn't have any stats she really needs to scale with, because you're just buffs and buffs have no effect for fate or anything, you build a crit in this case. And since the imaginary set is pretty damn good as well, though it might be hard for her to activate it because she doesn't debuff an enemy, but it's still a decent set nonetheless. When it does work, yeah, it should probably be a decent damage dealer. I don't think she'll. I mean, she might also be a pretty decent breaking imaginary shields because she has in her talent 7 layers, 1 arrow. Her basic attack deals additional damage and increases toughness, reducing damage by 100% with double. And essentially, what this means is her basic attack breaks shields better. That's pretty neat because her whole point exists. Her whole reason for being free is that you can break imaginary shields with her. So, hey, decent. Yeah, so this is looking pretty positive overall, right? Yeah, typical attack. Oh, and yeah, her technique is pretty cool. You get a really fast sprinting mode when you use her technique, and you get 2 stacks of rolling bowstrings as soon as you start the next battle. Pretty neat right there. That's pretty neat, especially for exploring. And since she's free, I might slaughter into my teams, honestly, just to get around faster. Her traces are also straightforward. So, when Yukong is on the field, imaginary damage dealt by allies increased by 12%. Yeah, run-of-the-mill, 12% more damage percent. So your damage won't be increased by 12%. You won't get that direct increase like with the Velt's trace, for example. It's just damage percent. So it gets diluted, but it's still good to have. So especially like, well, it's good to have in the sense that first of all it will buff her own damage, but also in the future or right now if you use it with Velt, which I might try because I am a loyal Velt main, which maybe someday a video about him. Maybe next week, maybe in 2 weeks, who knows? Who knows? Not gonna spoil. But yeah, when you have a image ally, like to carry a hunt or a destruction, whatever, who's doing a primary damage, she gives a passive buff there. Mini traces and here, when rolling bowstrings active, we can generate 2 additional energy every time an ally takes action, which means that since she gets 2 stacks, that's 4 energy for free, which yeah, is good. I mean, especially because her cost is pretty high at 130. And then more traces, blah blah blah. And then this is pretty neat. Archeon. Yukong can resist 1 debuff application for 1 time. This effect can be triggered again in 2 turns. Which means, literally, she has 100% effect res once every 2 turns. Which is pretty cool. Because that might mean you don't need to cleanse your support, for example. And if you're talking about cleansing, fun fact, for those who haven't caught on to it, Luocha has cleansing on his skill. Because in the live stream, when he used his own skill, not his effect, but his actual skill on himself, he removed a stack of burning. Which means he has cleanse on his skill, which also means that he can not only not get crowd controlled, so he will always have his turn basically, almost always, because he has high effect res built in, plus you can stack more, and he can cleanse, means he's a goddamn cheat code. It's like, if you watch my previous video, ignore everything negative about I said about his cleansing, ignore that. That was me being pessimistic, which I'm always gonna be. This game has made me scared. What happened to Silverwolf to a certain extent has made me scared. That they're gonna do this, like, that's why I was that pessimistic. But the fact that it isn't, the fact that he's a cheat code against any crowd control, he's a good pull. If you're gonna pull on a character the next patch and you don't have Bailu, pull him. Pull him, please. If you, unless you need like Silverwolf and you're just gonna go for like Mono Quantum, which actually Silverwolf is pretty decent there from future like the more calcs I've done, but it's complicated. I don't want to talk about Silverwolf right now because she's a headache. She's been haunting me, man. She's been haunting me. But yeah, yeah. So about cleansing, Luch is pretty great there. I want to get the word out since I did assume he wouldn't have it in the last video. Yeah, that's her traces. And overall, they're all pretty decent, but yeah, they do their thing of being traces and making Yukong better. Now, for the Eidolons, which I'm going to talk about because it's a 4-star, and while I don't like to talk about Eidolons for a 5-star, because that's whale territory, and in my opinion, anything above E1 maybe, like getting an E1 of a 5-star is whale territory. Yeah, it's a pretty, like, close-minded view of it, but I'm going to stick to it, I'm sorry. But it's a 4-star. For 4-star, it doesn't matter. I have, like, what, E6 Natasha already. So, yeah. We're gonna talk about Eidolons. Her E1, Aerial Marshal, at the start of the battle, increased the speed of allies by 10% for 2 turns. Neat. Just simple as, just, yeah, boom, speed. Which you can probably need for some, since it's across the board, it might help you outspeed some enemies. E2, Skyward Command. When any ally's current energy is equal to the energy limit, Yukong regenerates an additional 5 energy. This effect can only be triggered once for each ally. The trigger count is reset after Yukong casts her ultimate. What this means is that, from all her allies, she can gain 15 additional free energy. Combine that with her Majesta's trace, where she gets 2 additional energy from from each stack, so she has 2 stacks at E2. Yeah, you get a decent amount of energy, which is pretty important because her ultimate is where a majority of the work comes in. Without her ultimate, her buff is pretty mediocre. Which, I mean, she's opposite tier at that point, essentially. In her buffs, but we'll get to the more integrate stuff. Integrate. You get what I mean. Alright, her E3, Torrential Fusillade. Just talent level stuff, you know, skill plus 2 levels. I'll go there and do that. Boom, boom. You know, 88%, it's nothing. It's a joke. 8% isn't anything. But it's better than nothing as well, so. Zephyr and Echoes. When Roaring Boar Strings active, Yukong deals 30% more damage to enemies. This is pretty cool because when you use her ultimate, you already have like stacks because you should do her skill and then her ultimate. Because, yeah, it doesn't do anything. Her ult does not do anything except damage unless you already have stacks. So always skill and then ult before a certain eidolon we'll get to. But yeah, so 30% more damage, free damage. Yukong wants to be built into damage, so hey, pretty decent. And then August Deadshot, ultimate plus 2 levels and talent plus 2 levels. So we'll do that here as well. 12 and 12. As you can see, 29.4%, 70% more. Wow, that's actually pretty decent. Wow, yeah. Yeah, her potion damage goes up as well. This is just, yeah, this isn't gonna change. Just, yeah, this is 8%, where this is irrelevant, but this is pretty decent. So her E5 does something. And now her E6. Her goddamn E6. Now we get to a bit of a negative part, which you're never gonna avoid that with me. I am a realistic pessimist, I would say, I guess. I'm being realistic, but I'm not gonna be pessimistic for the sake of being like, unit sucks, don't pull. No, that's not me. But I'm being realistic here. Her E6 is pretty important. It's gonna change completely how you feel about her. Because with her ultimate, she gains 1 stack of Roaring Bowstrings, which I'm going to assume means that she doesn't need to use her skill beforehand, which means she has less of a skill point requirement for her buffing, and means you can use her ult before your carry's turn to get the buff instantly without having to deal with the turn order, which is something we're gonna get to in a second, which you're gonna get in like in 2 minutes or something. But yeah, so it means that when you cast your ult, boom, you have a stack. So if you're about to have Zealie's turn, boom, do ult, do Yukong's ult, boom, you have the entire the crit rate, crit damage buff for her entire resurgence and stuff, because it stays around as it still counts as her turn. Which is why sometimes Bronya's buff also sticks around on Sealy, because Resurgence doesn't count as ending your turn, just counts an additional action. Same goes for your ult. If you time her ult before her turn really ends, so if you're in the middle of a Resurgence activation, like turn, like a Resurgence extra turn, and then if you're in the middle of the attack and you get enough energy for your ult, and you activate your ult, you'll keep your buffs. So yeah, it's pretty big, because it means that having this buff is realistic. Before E6, it's very much like, you have to imagine that you'll get lucky, essentially. Which for it's imaginary. Ha ha ha, I get your joke, miHoYo. Hoyoverse, thanks a lot. But yeah, her E6 is pretty important. So before E6, we have to assume you have like this godly rotation to actually like assume you're gonna get the numbers I'm gonna show you later on. After E6, it's realistic to have these numbers that I'm showing you. Though I have not calculated with her slightly higher crit damage. I can do that. It's just 5% more, but also not much of a difference. Her main pointers are E6, honestly, and her E2, because energy is important. E2, E6 are the important ones. So yeah, that's it. So if you're going for Luocha, which I'm saying you should if you don't have Bailu, then you're might get some of these, and if you get her E6, that's a pretty big W. That's what I'm gonna say. And we'll get into later why it's a big W. Now to the light cones, you know, we always need those. So, if we ignore all the 3-star ones, we're going to 4-star. The 5-star we're not going to talk about because it works. Actually, I don't know if this part works. I don't know if it regenerates 1 skill point when the warrior uses her ultimate on ally. It might work, it might not work. I'm not going to bet on it. So I'm not even going to assume it will. Like, assume anything about it. And this is not going to be, you can't practice. The most you can use it for is this. The energy regeneration rate. But That's trolling. Alright, memories of the past. Increased break effect and additional energy. This might actually be good because if you need her for imaginary shield break. Oh wait, no. What am I talking about? Bro! Okay, I did not say anything. You did not hear a word from me just now. Oh my god. No, I didn't say anything. This is not... No, a break effect is all that happens when you break it. It is irrelevant. It is a dead stat. No, we're not... The most you can use this for is if you need energy. It can be nice if you need energy. Let's look at the S5 variant of this. 8 energy. Yeah, it could be decent, but I don't know if you'll need that much energy. So, okay, we'll ignore this one. Planetary rendezvous. I can't speak French, okay? After entering battle, if an ally deals the same damage type as the wearer, blah, this is just bullshit. It just talks like dumb. Essentially, what it means is, if Yukong is in your team, your whole team will get 12% more imaginary damage, which plays more into her role with her trace. So it's essentially this, but again. And with S5, it's 24%. So it's really fucking good, actually. It's really good. Especially on a support like Yukong, where she doesn't give damage percent like Bronya and Tingyun does. It's amazing to have. If you're supporting imaginary carry. So Velt and, you know, future Dan Heng Il, or I don't know what the full name is. It's something like Lu Bray or something. The future destruction imaginary unit. That's where it's going to be great. Dance. Just is W. All turns get forwarded. It's probably going to be W just to use 24%, you know. Plus with the win set, you can like just, yeah, it's you put Belt in your team, the enemy's never going to turn. It's amazing. The Battle Pass Light Cone, Tingyun Light Cone. It's going to work. It's amazing. Attack percent, crit damage, energy regeneration. It's RNG, but all these buffs are good because if you're playing Yukong, you have a carry that wants attack, that wants crit damage, that wants energy. Well, you always want energy regeneration, right? So yeah, it's a good light cone. Use it if you have it on her. Though I would use it on Tingyun instead. Now this one, despite the fact that it has Yukong on it, despite the fact that she's on it, it's not good on her because she does not give because you can't control who gets the next skill, the next turn, effectively enough. So it's a pretty much. Don't use this, essentially. These are your options, these three. If you don't have an imaginary on your team, and if you are free to play, use Dance. If you don't have any of them, use Chorus, I guess, or something, you know? Yeah, I guess this is like... Yeah, you kind of scuffed there. You need one of these three. Like, well, you need one of these two, for now at least. And that's her Lycon situation. So yeah, that's her kit. We'll move on to the math part of it, but that's gonna be in its own thing. So I'm gonna end the recording now and see you in a bit. All right, and now we get to the calculations. Because you know your boy did some more Excelling. Yeah, so we'll start out with Sealy and Yukong. And the reason I use Sealy as my baseline is because she's the unconditional best single target damage dealer in this game, and has literally very little to no RNG on her ultimate, meaning I can replicate this number much more efficiently in the game, assuming I had these exact stats, which I don't because we're on the early game and my relics all suck so much that you don't even want to look at them. But assuming I do one day, you know, this is realistic what I'm showing here. That's why. So if you're curious why it's Sealy. But down here I have Clara, and we'll get to Clara in a minute as well. So you have base Sealy, which isn't actually true because I have to do this, because my... Alright, there we go. So also, by the way, I color coded this. This is purple, like this is quantum, imaginary wind, imaginary quantum ice, imaginary quantum lightning. So there you go. This is the base damage, you know, weak as hell, but that's because no buffs. By the way, the resistance is the reason it's 100 is not because the enemy is weak to quantum. It's because Sealy gets a 20% resistance penetration at from her ult during her buff state, during from resurgence. But since she gets resurgence during her ult, guaranteed it's an RNG. It's added here. I could assume with a quantum weak enemy, but I don't know. I mean, it's hard to replicate it in a sense, you know. So yeah, there you go. The damage would be significantly higher, you know. Though with Steel Wolf, this does not change because Steel Wolf does not apply the weakness to a enemy that already has a quantum weakness. So the numbers would be the same no matter what the enemy has. So it would change these ones essentially. So compared to like Pella, for example, if we were to do Pella, I don't know why this bugged out into decimal points, but yeah, if you were going against a quantum weak enemy, as usual, you'll see the difference between Pella and Steel Wolf is not particularly large. It is quite small, especially then even more so if you go to E5. So our fifth Eidolon of Pella, which is this, and then oh yeah, and then I can change this to this. As you can see, the difference becomes even smaller, which is why I say stuff. Which is what you know me, you know I say stuff like, Pella is Silver Wolf is 10 to 15% better than Pella, which yeah, essentially what we have here. Obviously, this is against a quantum weak enemy, but at the same time, if you're not pulling Silver Wolf, then the most optimal / only time you'd want to pull out Sealy is against a boss that has a quantum weakness. So essentially, the grab becomes fair. If the boss does not have a quantum weakness, then yes, you have this, and if you have an easier Pella, then yeah, then you have a decent difference, which is where Silver Wolf's niche lies. Quantum teams that against enemies that don't have a quantum weakness. Yeah, so that's what I'm assuming, but yeah, this stays the way it is, so yeah, that's why these numbers are higher. Yeah, we have the base here, and then we have Yukong's skills, just alternate skill, so you seal against the attack percent, the crit rate, and the crit damage. As you can see, the difference is pretty noticeable. 17k. 1 second. Up. I like my numbers speed. There we go. 17k, and yeah, it's a buffer. She's a buffer. She's a decent buff. However, this is with E0, and as I said before, E0 has the caveat of you're praying that your buff does not get consumed before your carry gets it, in this case Sealy. So if Yukong has low speed and she gets her turn, or has lower, like say she's after Sealy, you're kind of screwed because you have 4 allies in your party, and if Yukong's the second, then there's going to be 2 more allies before Sealy's turn comes again, at which point the buff is going to be gone. Which means you want to have an ally that has more speed, which is why I actually, yeah, something like Pella, for example. Yeah, you could build Pella speed, but it's kind of weird. Again, that's the only thing with Yukong. These cocks assume you are lucky, or like you have the good planning here, the good foresight to time it exactly so that Sealy does get the buff. The good thing is at least that when Sealy gets Resurgence, it counts as an additional action, not a turn, so the buff stays, just like it does with Bronya's skill. So there's that synergy. But yeah, and that's why, but yeah, because of the whole, you have to time it right, and like, otherwise you get nothing out of it, is why I consider Yukong easier to be a usable unit, albeit very painful at times. At E6, it doesn't fucking matter. Simple as that. You use your ult, you get a stack, Sealy gets that stack instantly, because you can ult before it's Sealy's, during Sealy's first turn, before she actually does anything, and then you get the buff, and the buff stays, and you can use it in your ult. And speaking of your ult, if Sealy does an action, if you activate your ult before the turn ends, you'll keep your turn buffs, which is what you can do with Bronya's buff and stuff, so that even though you did one skill, got a kill, got Resurgence, used Resurgence, if you time your ult right as you're doing Resurgence action, means that it counts an additional action instead of end of your turn, which means the buff stays. So with the right planning, and with E6 for example, Yukong can, these kind of numbers, which, well, 70.2 because you get your E5 buff. It's realistic. It's a decent buff right here. And I also have a debuffer here, which we'll get to. But before that, so Bronya's here as well, because of freaking course she is. 60k. Simple as that. Ult plus skill, you do your thing, and, she does her thing. And this is with S5, past and future. This, exactly. It's 32%. It's a free light cone, so I'm assuming you'll get it to max if you have Bronya. Or you just get her 5-star light cone, which is 30%, but also it's slightly less, but at S1. However, you get a skill point and stuff, so, and energy generation, so I consider it better still. And yeah, moving on, now we get to the actual combinations. So this is Silver Wolf, our best debuffer in the game right now, or, well, in the game right now is wrong, but upcoming in the game, in 2 weeks, in less than 2 weeks. Silver Wolf plus Yukong, assuming you have everything right. So as you can see, almost 100k, which is close to Bronya. Again, this assumes you get everything right. Silver Wolf does the right weakness. Her ult, it doesn't get effect resisted. Yukong times it right, etc, etc. So yeah, it is, as usual, pretty damn unrealistic. Wait, this is... That doesn't affect this. I don't know where I'm getting these stats from then. Oh, okay, I'm getting it from here. Okay, makes sense. So this would be with E6, so... There you go, 98k, so that's pretty decent. Again, if you have E6, it's pretty decent combo. If you don't have Bronya, but you have Silver Wolf and you have Yukong. Though, if you pull Silver Wolf and then you pull E6 Yukong, I'd be surprised. Then you're kind of a whale, but hey, that's a combo you can do. And that was with Pella, the more realistic option. As you can see, as I mentioned before, this is without the resistance. So this is against a non-quantum weak enemy. If the enemy is quantum weak, then, as I've stated before, it's a 10% difference, so it works just as well. And this case, Pella only needs your ult, which means you have more skill points to spare for Sealy to do something with. So it's in pretty close contention in the situation where the enemy is weak to quantum. If it's not weak to quantum, then Silver Wolf pulls ahead, and that's just her niche. That's where she's good. That's what you want to pull her for. Now the combo I believe internally to be the best. I myself believe to be the best, despite the fact that there's nothing to do with this, is Silver Wolf and Ting Yun. So Silver Wolf ult plus skill plus Ting Yun ult plus skill. 70k, which you might think is lower than both, like is just slightly higher than this, but on like a non-quantum weak enemy, and is lower than this. But Ting Yun is just amazing in the fact that she uses one as skill point every other turn, like every 3 turns. I don't exactly remember right now. It's basically brain dead, and her ult gives energy and damage percent, and energy is pretty big because you can do more ults, like I said in my Soul Wolf video. Just Ting Yun is just amazing. It's gonna take a long ass time, like actually a long ass time, before Ting Yun gets any sort of power creep, because that unit will need to do like double the energy regeneration that Ting Yun does, at which point you're like maxing your ult. So at that point you get infinite, like 2 ults back to back, no problem. At which point we have the difficulty of this game kind of goes out the window. So yeah, Ting Yun's pretty amazing. Even though that's the thing, because I cannot actually quantify her energy batterying without doing multiple rotations, which is its own headache. But assuming, just keep in your head, this may be lower, but in theory you could double this in your head if you're like a Ting Yun simp like me, and you could double this in your head, and it's 14k because you can do the ult more often, so it beats all of these guys. But yeah, that's that. What's the difference here? Oh, it's against base. Okay, I have base Wolf here. She's just chilling here. I don't know why I have her there. But yeah, that's it for Sealy. As you can see, Yukong is decent. This is not like I said, this is not a particularly deep video I'm making here. Still, in the sense that I'm exposing a nerf. Yukong is just pretty decent. She's tough to use properly. She has a luck gap, not a skill gap. It's a luck gap over anything. Well, actually, it's a planning gap. It's a knowledge check, you could even say. Before E6, after E6, she's just a brain dead press ult get buff character, which is good. That's what a support should do. That's what Bronya does. Well, okay, with her skill too, but yeah. So overall, she's decent. But let's not look at Sealy. Look at Clara, who I don't have Clara. I've barely played her, but I have been told should work well because Clara's counter, her highest source of damage, does not use her turn because it's the enemy's turn. What does this mean? It means that you have the base here, so this is the enhanced counter, this is the normal counter, just typical Clara, no buffs. Then with Yukong, as you can see, the numbers spike up heavily, just because, by the way, it's decimals here, I don't know why, because that's just what Yukong does. She gives a good heavy amount of buffs. And then with Ting Yun, which is slightly lower, but you get her ult easier, and Clara's ult is pretty damn important because it increases her damage by a good bit, because this is with her ult. So this is the enhanced counter you get from her ult. This is just normal counter. So yeah, once again it's lower, but you could technically double it because you'll get it more often, so it beats this. So if you're a Ting Yun simp, if you don't like Ting Yun, just say, oh my god, yep, Yukong beats Ting Yun, end of the case, and case closed. So yeah, here's Yukong with Pella, even bigger numbers, Ting Yun with Pella, smaller numbers than this, but you get energy. And then Yukong with Silver Wolf, which is, yeah, kind of insane. This is kind of peak Clara right here, because Clara's not a character that wants Bronya, so Yukong ends up being the best character for her, because the buffs don't expire as fast, theoretically speaking. Yeah, that's Clara, and that's Yukong. That's it, kind of. Thanks for watching the video in a sense, because we're done. Yukong is not a complicated character per se, she just gives decent buffs, and that's it. The biggest complexity of her is the fact that you need to balance around the turn order, but if you have E6 or if you've planned ahead, It doesn't matter. She does a great buff. She's free in 1.2. You don't even need to pull for her. And compared to Asta, she does buff better in raw damage. Obviously, Asta has her speed buff, which is its own kind of cool thing. But if you just need a Harmony character that buffs, Yukong will fill that role and she'll do it well. Yeah, we got a good character on our hands here. A pretty decent 4-star, I'd say. Yeah. It feels good. I don't need to be like, oh my god, Lucha might not have cleanse. Oh my god, Snow Wolf needs a specific situation to be good. Nah, none of that bullshit. None of that crap. It's Yukong is good if the buff is there. If the buff isn't there, she's not good. Surprisingly enough, when the character doesn't do anything, she's not good. No way. And that's that. That's our 1.1 characters completed. Ah, good to be done. Next week's goal for me is probably going to be making a 1.0 meta roundup. It'll be, on one hand, it's going to be a bit of a time capsule, so where I can like simp Ting Yun a bit more, and look at myself in a year and say, oh my god, he liked Ting Yun, this Hanabi character. I'm just throwing names out there, who knows if that character exists. This Lynx character, wow, she's so much better, man. How could I ever like Ting Yun? Maybe that happens, or maybe in a year I say, why is Ting Yun still the best 4-star in the game, you know? Another reason for making it is to check if my channel is surviving based on the fact that there's hype for these beta characters. I don't care if that's the case, I'll still keep doing this stuff. I do this for the sake of informing at least a dozen people, at least 2 people in the world, because one person might be one of my friends, so they already know what I'm saying because I'm talking to them. But at least 2 people who don't know me learn something from this video. Mission accomplished. And on the subject of learning and helping out, here's a cool chart I made after the live stream yesterday, the Chinese one, and the English one today, but so yeah, this is the Honkai Star Rail 1.1 Who Do I Pull chart. It starts with a very basic question. Do you want to pull a new character this patch? If you're saving for someone like Kafka who's coming next patch, then yes, this is a no for you. You say no, and then you skip pulling patch. It's a skip pulling patch for you. You skip, alright? You save your Jades for the next patch or whoever you're saving for. If you do want to pull a new character, if you're in the market to gacha, then the question is, do you have Bailu? If you don't have Bailu, then you pull Lucha. It's not a question. Look at his pixels. You pull this man. He does cleanse, and he does crowd control resistance. You pull him. It's not a question. I'm sorry. If you do have Bailu, and then the question becomes, do you have Sealy? If you do, and you want to pull a new character this patch, you pull Silwolf. She's great for Sealy in situations where Sealy would be worse off, you know? As I showed here, you know, this is big. This is kind of big. Assuming you get the right RNG, assuming it's the enemy that's not weak to Quantum, this is amazing. And if you're wondering why I said Toyovas ruined her, it's because that's her only situation where she's good at. And the fact that if you have this one other limited 5-star, if you don't have her, it means literally you don't pull this patch. Like, literally. Might want to pull this patch, but if you have Bailu and you don't have Sealy, you shouldn't pull this patch. Kafka will be better. Blade will be better for you. Obviously, this is assuming you want meta. If you don't want meta, pull whoever the fuck you want. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not trying to force anything on you. If I'm stopping you from pulling your favorite character, as usual, shame on me. Don't listen to me. Go pull your favorite character, alright? And with that said, that was me, Kallum. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you liked it. Sub if you want more of this. You know, subs literally tell me, hey, there's someone out there who wants more of this. There's more people who want to be educated about this kind of stuff, who want to see my Excel charts more. And that means the world to me, like I said. Like I hopefully have said before. And yeah, that's that. I hope you have a nice weekend. I hope you have enough pulls for who you're going to pull for, and you're going to get them, hopefully. And with that said, this was Kallum signing out. Bye.